Okay, Mila Falcher, welcome to Irish Granny Helen. And before I start, I just want to thank everybody who keeps coming back for more. And I really appreciate everybody who's subscribed, everybody who's joined as a member. Thumbs up. And I welcome comments. I do eventually get around to answering them. Sometimes it's really late, but I do get around to answering them. And I'm just really touched. And something occurred to me the other day. I occasionally get messages from people from so far away. It just astounds me that people have gotten in touch with me from, I think, Hong Kong, no, Taiwan. And I'm trying to think of other places. People in Africa, people in the islands, the Caribbean and the West Indies, people all over Europe. I have a special friend in Ukraine. It gives me chills to know that people from all over the world care about the same things. And the topic today, these comments from people, the connection that people make that reach out, really drives home the topic of this conversation today. The fact that we're all connected, and this is nothing new. People knew this thousands of years ago. And that's what we're going to look at today, the essential oneness of all of us and our obligation to each other. So this is research that I've done from the internet, all different sorts of sources, but they almost all say exactly the same thing. But because the two most forward that I go to first, I'll mention them, the Daily Stoic and Medium. And both of those sites are really great if you want information about Stoicism, but there's a ton of information out there. And you can go directly to the source. I've got a great book that I don't know where it came from, sitting on my bookshelf for years. I dusted it off a while back. It's the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius and the writings of Epictetus and Seneca. And famous Stoic thinkers. And just if you could pick it up at random and just read a paragraph, that can take you through the day. That is so dense in content, food for thought and food for action. It's fascinating. So last week, or maybe at the beginning of this week, I don't know, I put out a video on Stoicism as a daily practice. And one of the things that they really urge is journaling, keeping a journal, keeping a diary, reflecting in the morning and at night about where you're going and then where you've been all day. And the benefit of that kind of introspection. They advocate very highly for introspection. Stop reacting and start thinking. So let's talk about Stoicism and charity. Now, I just thought, okay, what do they have to say that I know other thinkers have talked about? I've talked many times about the teachings of the world's most well-known religions in relationship to how we should act, how we should think about our fellow man and woman. And so I thought, I wonder if the Stoics addressed this specifically. And of course they did. So I'm calling this Stoicism and Charity. It could just as easily be called Stoicism and Compassion, or Care, or Love, Fraternal Love, and Sororal Love. The girls always get left out. It makes me mad. Okay, Stoicism and Charity. So the article that I read from the Daily Stoic tried to bring it right into the present time and said, hundreds of millions of people are food insecure. Many are suffering from famine, but many more are never quite sure where their next meal is coming from. More than 38 million people in the United States don't know where their next meal is coming from. And that includes at least 1.5 million children. Uh, Imagine, when you most need it for the development of your brain and the ability to reason, the ability to learn, you're not getting the fuel you need. And for a child to go to bed hungry is very disturbing to me. So Stoicism is about focusing on what is within your control rather than raging or weeping or just stewing in jealousy or stewing in envy and anger or acting out of greed. Rather than letting these huge emotions completely overtake you, what you need to do is bring it in, rein it in, and think about what is within your control. Thinking about all the kids that are hungry, the people that go to bed hungry and never know when their next meal is coming from, is very difficult to think about. You can make yourself not a stable person by simmering in that kind of anxiety and sadness and angst. But the Stoics have an interesting take on it. They say, acknowledge it. It's real. You cannot pretend it's not happening. You can't just look away because it bums you out or it stresses you out. It harshes your buzz. It's there, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. Best to acknowledge it, and then what can you personally do about it? But the larger question is, why should you care? If if the people in your family are fed Ordo amore, is that the saying of J.D. Vance? Something, my Latin may be slightly off. I don't remember, but maybe it's ordono amore. It's the hierarchy of your affections. Who should you care about? Why should you care about people that you don't even know? These are faceless, anonymous people on the other side of the planet. Why should we care? And they have an answer for that. Because suffering humans are us and we are them. Now, I have had people push back on this concept. I have said, when one person in the world suffers, we all suffer. But here's the reality. Here's the philosophy and very possibly the physics of this belief system. We're all derived as a part of the same source. We are all part of the same source. Therefore, we are all part of each other. Look at it as a mathematical problem, and it begins to make some sense. If we are equal to the source, if they are equal to the source, therefore we and they are equal, the same thing. And if we allow harm through callousness or indifference or too much stress, we can't cope with it, if we let that harm happen to other people, we're only hurting ourselves because we and they are one. Marcus Aurelius actually sold the furnishings of his imperial palace to help Rome when it was going broke and people were starving. Now, he had other issues. No person is perfect, and there were things about Marcus Aurelius that were not admirable. But given the context of his time, that is pretty astounding. I can't imagine Caligula or Nero or Domitian or any of those guys doing that. Then there's this belief in a lot of philosophies, including in Stoicism, and I believe Christianity has a kind of a same concept, and J.D. Vance thinks he understands it. Well, I'm here to tell you he doesn't. He has it wrong. So we have circles of concern. And picture yourself in the center of concentric circles. You're the hub in the center of these circles that are around each other, and they reach out and go around each other. Like if you dropped a stone in the water and you saw the circle ripples move out, that stone is you. Those ripples are the people in your world, in your sphere. So the ones closest to you are your loved ones, your relatives, your close friends, the people that you know and see every day and, you know, really worry about and really love because it's personal. And then the next layer is, you know, maybe the people down the street that you don't know so well, but, you know, they're in your community. You want them to be good. Then there's your city, then your state, then your region, and then your continent, and then your planet. But everyone has those concentric circles, and as they move out, they intersect. We all intersect. What happens to one is felt by all. So it's just natural, of course, that we would be the most concerned about the people closest to us, closest emotionally, and closest in proximity. That's just natural. But our job as right thinking, right acting human beings to try for the greatest good, our job is not just to be satisfied with helping the ones around us, love the one you're with. That order of that hierarchy of affection that J.D. Vance talks about, that my friend who is fundamentalist Christian who said, Jesus doesn't want us to help children in other countries. He wants us to take care of our own first. Well, my response to that would be define our own. We're all each other's. We're all connected. And yes, you want to do what you can do. You want to focus on the possible. And you may not be able to go to Sudan and feed the children in Sudan today. That's obviously for most of us not realistic. But there are plenty of children probably living within a block of you that are hungry, or old people who are really worried about where their next meal is coming from. There are people who need us close to us, but there's always something that we can do. And so we don't want to just offer help from inside our little world. Our job is to draw our circle inward. That's what the Stoics believe, not just to focus on what's around you, but to reach out and draw all those concentric circles inward to bring everybody home to you. And if we all do that, what happens? We all end up uniting. I mean, it's actually a physical thing that you can picture in your mind. And we have to learn to care as much as possible for as many as possible, to draw our concern inward. Now that doesn't mean only worry about yourself, only worry about your loved ones. That's where J.D. Vance gets it wrong. You want to draw your concern inward, extend your concern out to the world, and bring it back to your heart to do as much good as possible. It's our obligation. It's not just potential. This is why we're here. This is our obligation to help others. This is what Buddha said. This is what Jesus said. This is what they all say, all the guys, all the great thinkers, all the avatars, the bodhisattvas, the saints. There's no shortage of wise people through history, and they all say the same thing. So you don't just stop at your own. You just don't keep short-sightedness. Put on your glasses and see farther. Our obligation is to serve others. And our obligation is to illustrate virtues. We have to be role models of courage and justice for everybody. That's what the universe demands of us. That's why we are here incarnate, is to use this physical reality to expand justice, courage, right thinking, and to help as many of our fellow human beings as we can, and other creatures on the planet. Yes, charity begins at home, absolutely, because that's common sense. You do what you can, as much as you can, but that's because it's the most immediate. It doesn't stop there. You don't just feel satisfied because your kids go to bed well fed. That's just the start. That's not the end of our obligation. That's the start. We can't alleviate everybody's suffering. But when we do as much as is within our power, the difference is huge, because if everybody does that, it makes a significant difference. Epictetus said, never second guess an instinct to be generous. Never talk yourself out of that. Don't worry about what's done with your charity. Now, this was an interesting conversation. Oh, well, I don't want to give that guy $5 because he's just going to go to the bar. Or why would I contribute to that guy? Because obviously it's going to go up his arm, So don't worry about what's done with your charity. Once it's given, it's no longer yours to worry about. It's up to the recipient to decide the next step in the process. It's like people who took risks with their lives and took risks to save people during World War II. They put a lot of people's lives at risk by doing that, because retaliation, if they were caught, always extended beyond the individual. But that was not their issue. Their issue was this choice. Do I do the right thing, or do I not do the right thing? Do I do the right thing not thinking about the repercussions? It's just the right thing. It might end very badly for me and for a lot of people, but it's the right thing. The alternative is to not do it or to do the wrong thing. And those are not the choices you want to be making. And so charity is the same thing. You give to people. It's not an appropriate question to ask yourself, should I give because I don't think they're going to use it advisedly or wisely? That's not your problem. That's their problem. Your problem is, do I give it or don't I? And the answer should be yes, if you can possibly do it. So Epictetus says, I've seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, which is another interesting way of looking at people. I'm going to give this guy $5 and he's probably taking it down to the bar, but he and I are the same. So who am I to judge? We're both possessing a share of the divine, and to turn your back on him goes against nature. It's unnatural. It's like punishing yourself or rejecting yourself. Also, we place value on material goods. What's more important, that $5 or even a momentary relief for this person who is asking for it? So we also should not place so much value on material goods beyond the obligations of the law and your responsibility. Yes, pay your bills, take care of your family, of course. But this outsized veneration and respect for people who have money, I just turn on the television and you can easily see what I'm talking about. The more money you have, the more famous, the more people think that you're so cool, so smart. A lot of people think certain people are smart because they have money. That's not logical. It's not true. They're not smart because they have money. They're rich because they have money. That's all you can definitely say. So I talked about, it's ordo amoris is the belief of advanced hierarchy of your affections. And it's used to justify the mistreatment and callous acts and cruelty to other people, deport people and social programs, deny international aid because we take care of our own. Everybody is your own. And yes, you have to prioritize. Of course you do. But that element of callousness, that's the issue. We should not, we do care about the ones we love, but we shouldn't stop there. We shouldn't end at that point. Our concern must extend beyond our personal world. Heracles described the concentric rings that make up the universe, and each of us is in the center of our own reality. So these are concepts that have been around a very long time. And these rings intersect. Like I said, they all reach out, but eventually they overlap. And we're obligated as creations of a common source to help each other as we would hope that ourselves would be helped. Which brings me to the next topic, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Somebody said that once. Stoics believe you pull others into your focus of loving concern, and then you extend that love outward, and they called it a beautiful madness. And I like that. So the examples the Stoics gave in their writings would be like the man who dies trying to save a drowning stranger, or he who saves his little bit of money to save another country, to help those in need, like being poor but saving up some money to mail to another continent where there's famine, that kind of thing. He who trades his freedom for diplomatic trust. They used an example of a slave, a guy who gave himself up to slavery, well, like a hostage, a diplomatic hostage. He was willing to do that so that the opposing country would see it as being trustworthy, that I trust you with my life and I want you to trust me, and we'll work out a diplomacy. Or, I don't know, a society that makes room for refugees. The concept of giving criminals a second chance. Now, I'm not talking about letting serial killers run around wild. That's an extreme, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about providing the proper kind of counseling and follow-up care and guidance, which we don't do. I mean, we might tell somebody, if you watch YouTube and you watch the true crime, like court cameras and arrest cameras, and you watch what happens with people, they get embroiled in these terrible situations, either because of mental health or substance abuse, whatever, and they end up in court, and the laws can be draconian. And you realize that when you see the comparison between what Americans get for the same crime, what somebody in maybe England would get for that crime. I always am taken aback. Wow, that's such a small sentence for that. Here, they'd be in prison for 30 years. Is their society less safe? I don't think so. So what are we doing wrong? They provide rehab and social services that we don't provide often, and I'm generalizing, but there's not a lot of follow-up here. You may be adjudicated, okay, you're on probation and you have to go to the 6 weeks of classes. Oftentimes people don't go because there's no follow-up. So giving criminals a second chance with the caveat that there's responsible follow-up. The farmer and his family who hid Jews during the war, and then when they were caught, they were executed. His pregnant wife was executed. Their 7 children, the neighbors, the people in the village. So those are examples of people who did the right thing despite the potential negative repercussions. Doing the right thing is not always in the best interests of our own personal short-term benefits. But we have to do the right thing, no matter what, no matter what the difficulty, no matter what the consequences. And it may be hard to strike the balance between our personal comfort and helping others, but we have to push ourselves past our comfort zone. So this is the embodiment of justice. So I always think of the story of the widow's mite. I know I've mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it again. A mite, this is in the New Testament. It's told a couple of different ways in the Gospels of Mark and Luke. A mite is the smallest possible Roman coin at the time. I think 2 of them make up the smallest coin, so it's like half of the smallest coin. So the story is that Jesus was speaking and he was watching the rich people giving big chunks of money, donors giving money to the temple, and he saw this older woman who was a widow, and that is implying no income, who gave her last mite, her last tiny little coin. And he said she put more than all the others in. And they said, what are you talking about? She gave practically nothing. And he said, yes, but they gave of their surplus, of their wealth. And she gave from her poverty. She's contributed all she had. That's more. And in the larger scriptural context, this particular discussion was about the hypocrisy of the rich. And Jesus said something about they devour the houses of widows. Boy, does that sound familiar, 2007 and 8, right? Then they go to church on Sunday. But he pointed out, yeah, they may be giving big chunks of money. Doesn't hurt them. No skin off their nose. And they turn around the next day and rob from the poor. Her contribution means far more as far as the intrinsic value of it. So he commends her generosity, and he talks about their greed and hypocrisy being reflected in the same example. And he emphasized charity as the core of Christian living. So it's core to Stoicism, it's core to Buddhism, it's core to Christianity, it's core to Islam. The greatest commandment is love your neighbor as yourself. The Sermon on the Mount. You want to know everything you need to know about the message of Jesus, and you're not trained in Christianity, or maybe you need a little refresher, read the Sermon on the Mount. What matters is how you treat others, the needy, the hungry, the thirsty, the sick, the homeless, the naked, the prisoner, the stranger. In Latin, it's called caritas, which means love or affection. That's where the word charity comes from, caritas. Acts of charity are love put to action. Compassion comes from the Latin for to suffer together. Passio, is suffering, and com is with, and it means fellow feeling. If one suffers, we all suffer, and we must feel compassion. And then I'm just going to end this with a little quote, might ring a bell. I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. So that's my little sermon about Stoicism for the day. Thank you. I hope this helps everybody and puts kind of a little light on what they knew thousands of years ago, and it still holds true. So thanks a lot, and slán go foil, slánte.